mic, please, everyone. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. We are Team-1, and today we present on cross-cultural communication in organization and acupuncture.
Yeah. My name is Dan Zheng, and I will contact China and Australia contact.
Hello everyone, my name is Saida Alina. We will be presenting for moving on. Yeah.
Myself, Kavya Ajay. I'm presenting about high contrast culture in India.
Hello, my name is Nizam. I'm gonna talk about how we're gonna make a communication easily.
Introduce yourself, Jesse. Sorry, everyone. So my teammate, he recently had a surgery, so he is unable to speak. His name is Zhang Zhang, and I'll be talking on behalf of. Okay, let's begin.
So just a little bit introduction to the topic. In today's multicultural workplace, effective cross-multicultural is essential to team success especially in countries like Australia, where diverse cultural backgrounds frequently come together. Cross-cultural communication involves the exchanging of information between individuals from different backgrounds, where understanding differences in language, nonverbal cue, values, and communication styles is crucial to achieving effectiveness, collaboration, and mutual understanding. Challenges within a multicultural team in Australia is composed of individuals from low contact cultures, as Australians, and high contact cultures, such as China and India. In multicultural teams, the differences can influence how feedback is given, how conflict is addressed, and how meetings are conducted. While Australians tend to favor direct, clear, and ambiguous speech, individuals from high contact cultures may rely on implicit cues, indirect communication, and content-sensitive interpretations. These differences can cause friction within the teams if not acknowledged and managed appropriately. In order to analyze the topic, we use following theory as a theoretical framework. Firstly, we need to define what's a cross-cultural communication, which I just did. It's the process of exchanging information between individuals from different cultural backgrounds, which just depends on understanding and adapting to diverse cultural norms, languages, and communication styles. The next theory we're going to use is cultural dimensions. This is a framework to categorize national cultures according to dimensions such as power distance, individualism, and collectivism, and uncertainty avoidance. Each of these dimensions influence workplace communication behaviors. Next, we're going to use high contact and low contact theories. This is a theory that helps to distinguish between cultures that rely heavily on context, nonverbal communication, and those that prefer explicit, direct verbal messages. In the last theory, we're going to use the cultural intelligence. This refers to an individual's ability to effectively understand, adapt, and function in cultural diverse environments, incorporating cognitive, motivational, and behavioral competencies. To briefly talk about these the differences between low contact and high contact cultures. As you can see here, low contact cultures is where communication is explicit, direct, and task-oriented. It tends to value clarity, straightforwardness, and verbal expression. in professional environments, they are typically comfortable offering open feedback, expressing disagreement, and engaging in candid discussions, which reflecting a broader cultural emphasis on individualism and low power distance. On the other hand, high contact culture is where communication often indirect and relational. Messages may be conveyed through tone, body language, and context rather than direct speech. And in this culture, to maintain social harmony and respect hierarchies, feedback is usually softened, and disagreements be expressed simply or avoided altogether. So when these culture interacts, miscommunication can happen. The low culture context people may view indirectness as unclear, while high contact individuals may see directness as blunt or disrespectful. So understanding these cultural norms is crucial for improving collaboration and reducing friction in multicultural teams. Next we move to a different.
Okay, I will briefly talk about a topic, high context and low context. I will be actually about the China and Australia. So I will use China and Australia as examples. So let's begin with the China. China is context culture. The mean is communication is often industry. People rely on relationships to see the setting, and even select to convey means word and are just one part of the message. In China, business cultures building relationship known as 关系 is key also. The idea of face of 面子 plays a big role. People often avoid things different protect the other's personal identity. So the industry style can even be seen online. For example, someone might send a point emoji in a group chat before slow bring up what they actually need. It's all about timing and splitting. So now let's take a look at Australia. Australia is low context culture. People are generally more direct, informal, and open. They get to the point, often use humor to keep things relaxed. In business, they value quick discussions, open discussions, and clear problem solving. However, the conflict can lead to misunderstandings. For example, if an Australian manager is too blunt with China colleagues, is many coming offer as rude of disrespectful. On the other hand, if China employs styles select in the meeting, Australia might among the group, even when they don't. So what's the solution? We need what I do call cultures code switching, and being able to adjust your communication style besides on who you're speaking to. For Australia, the mic means slow downs, showing protecting, and for Chinese preferable, it could mean be more direct when necessary and express ideas clearly unfold. In the end, narrow style better. A narrow style is better. They just reflect different value, and when we understanding and respect them different. So let's move the India.
High context culture, India and Australia. India is a good example of high context culture whose communication is usually implicit, indirect, and much rooted in social and relationship cues compared to the low context nature of communication in Australia. Indian professions are more likely to fall back non-verbal cues, tone of voices, pauses, and contextual knowledge of message as determining factors of communicating. Indian work spots are characterized by harmony, respect to hierarchy, and saving the face, which are typical features of power and distance collectivist. Indian communication differs from that of the Australians as it promotes subtlety and a relationship, unlike the Australian measure of directness and individualistic autonomy. Criticism or dissent is frequently couched in a sophisticated manner. Sometimes the criticisms are not made so as not to hamper the relationship of the people in a group. This is unlike in the Australian workplace where free feedback and discussion is welcome and is looked upon as evidence of involvement and openness. During meetings, people of India may not openly contradict a senior member or a peer, but also may not interrupt, but will rather speak privately with individuals and even use a third person as a channel of communication. The Australian view of decision making is that it might be sluggish because there is a certain need to achieve consensus or consult superiors. In contrast to Australian teams where openness and non-hierarchy are admirable, Indians tends to display respect to authority and experience, and junior members of a team might be reluctant to express disagreement in front of the rest of the team. This communication barrier will cause miscommunications in multicultural groups in Australia. As an example, when dealing with Indian employees, Indian interactors may be interpreted as evasive and unassertive. Furthermore, practice which incorporates informal tone on first name basis communication by Australians might be excessively familiar to Indian colleagues who are used to being very formal and respect other dependents on levels or position or age. Australian managers should have an important role to understand and become culturally smart by being aware of these cultural norms, promoting open communication, providing an explanation when it comes to direct style of communicating, and feeding off one another or as possible construct that may support mutual respect and effective work.
Thank you so much, Kapil. I'll be talking about the implications on behalf of Jia Singh. So the implications for Australian managers here are building on Guanxi and trust, which is they follow. So we are focusing on embracing relationship building. So the Chinese workplaces, they completely rely on personal networks, which is known as Guanxi, and trust as the basis for their businesses, as well as they invest time socially as they meet after work for dinners and to create a better bond with their team members, and they to show that they are genuinely interested and care about their work peers, as well as to show respect and face. They acknowledge titles and seniority that they would, instead of here in Australia, they would always want someone to refer to their names, but in China they would refer someone as sir or with their like a Mr. or with their last name. And as well as they're very patient. So they do is trust often builds gradually within close inner circles. So they try to build up the rapid within the teams, slowly just holding patient and being consistent, having a consistent respect and follow up are the key solutions to that. So these are the implications that Australian managers could try to incorporate more to be adjusted to the Chinese employees. Now, looking back at adapting feedback style, they use indirect feedback. So what Chinese colleagues tend to give criticism softly to preserve harmony, right? So they frame suggestions positively and avoid blunt words, because, for instance, in Australia it's more direct. If there is something wrong, or they would prefer upfront confrontation. Whereas in a Chinese culture, they would prefer to arrange their words make it look nice and not to come off as rude. And they always highlight the positive first. So they would start off as encouraging the employee by recognizing their achievements, and then they would also slowly in a nice manner point out what the mistakes are. They also check the understanding as they ask open-ended questions to confirm what everyone understands and feels comfortable with. So they would always make sure that they're empathetic towards their employees, and so they would always take in suggestions like, what do you think about this idea, for an instance. And they also read non-verbal cues, so they pay attention to tone and body language, as Chinese colleagues may hint at concerns rather than stating them outright. Like, they rather focus on how the statement was said in the manner rather than what the statement meant. So if someone is coming off as rude, it might mean as very negative in the, so it is a very important aspect. So they also focus on reading the non-verbal cues, as in they pay attention to tone and body language, as I've mentioned, as Chinese colleagues may hint at concerns rather than stating them outright, as I've already said that. And in this image, we can see that of two colleagues discussing over a cup of coffee or an kind of speech bubble with a question or to suggest like they're having a nice, gentle conversation where they're like interacting with each other, rather like, you know, making it look like there is a conflict, right? Just like a regular conversation, they have to make it look like that. Now, as for the digital communication and etiquette, so in that they embrace preferred platforms. So as we know that WeChat is a huge thing in China. That is the biggest and the major mode of communication. So they use, many Chinese colleagues use WeChat for quick updates instead of just an email. So they rely on WeChat more than emails or WhatsApp and all other platforms. So yeah, so they should consider, like, if they want to incorporate communicating with the Chinese employees, they should consider installing WeChat group or have a similar channel so that they can make the Chinese employees feel inclusive, as they're already more accustomed to it. So now, to clarify the norms, they agree on expected response times and level of formality. For example, they clarify whether a formal greeting is needed in chat and how emojis should be used. So that is also something very important that they refer to. And they also follow up on key messages. For instance, for important instructions, they send a quick follow-up call or a voice note to ensure nothing is misunderstood. Sometimes text can be blunt and they do not always communicate what you want to convey. So they go for a call instead, make it seem important, and use video or voice when needed. So for an instance, they will hold occasional video calls, or just sometimes we would think in Australian culture, we would think that that could be just an email, right? Why did we have to go for a video call? But in their context, they prefer to talk eye to eye, face to face, and try to, because they focus on the body languages. So the video calls and speaking up front is very important for them. So yeah, and that is why that is how they convey tone and build rapport across cultures. So that can be implemented. As for navigating the hierarchy and authority, we can say that when they acknowledge hierarchy, China is a higher power distance than Australia. So they use formal titles and show the difference to senior team members. So in an Australian office, my boss and I, we just call each other by our nicknames, and we just say hi to each other. We never we will have a chat about anything and all. We can all But in a Chinese culture, they refer when a senior professional is walking by, they would probably bow to them and address them. And invite input explicitly, like they encourage quieter colleagues to speak up by asking for their opinions directly, since subordinates may otherwise stay silent. So in a meeting setup, they would prefer that the junior colleagues, they raise their hands if they have an opinion to add. So that is also an important social cue to understand. And they would interpret silence carefully. A lack of immediate feedback often reflects respect, not disinterest. So if someone in this culture, in the Western culture mostly, if someone is silent, we think that they're ignoring us, they're being rude. No, they could be trying to understand you, or they are trying to interpret what you're trying to say. So sometimes a pause and allow time. So if you want to incorporate more, so you have to pause and allow time for answers, because the other people, they might be thinking or reflecting on how to answer. So that is not directly reflected as to be ignored or negligence. So to clarify, this is a decision process. So they outline who makes final decisions and confusion from different expectations about authorities. So they would always neither like even if it was like a junior team or a low hierarchy team who have made done all of the work, they would always refer to the hierarchy, the highest person in the hierarchy to confirm the decision they are going to implement. And now Anjan will discuss the research best practices.
So I'm gonna talk about the how we can make communication better in team, where people come from different cultures, especially in Australian workplace. In these teams, people may come from different culture, shows emotion in different ways, or have different ideas about respect and leadership. This can make talking and working together a bit difficult and hard sometimes. To help these, we use three ideas of strict dimension. This talks about things like how much people respect authority, or if they work more alone or in a group. Another one is Hall's communication style. This means how good someone is at working place with different cultures or people. Good tips for this is to include learning about other cultures, having open talking, and making sure everyone feels included when making decisions. This can stop misunderstanding and help everyone work better together. Another one is how cultural intelligence helps the team. Now let's see why cultural intelligence or CQ is important for the teams. Study in 2021 shows that people from Switzerland and China working together, it shows that people have high CQ. They felt more like one team and like a family. This helped them talk better. They were clear, kind, and felt relaxed. Because of that, the team worked better and got more work done. So CQ doesn't make teams better by itself, but it helps people feel connected and talk well, and that makes the team stronger. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anjan. Okay, moving forward, these are the recommendations for the managers that they can incorporate to create a harmony between the three cultures. So first of all, we start off with the CQ training example. So in an Australian multinational operating in both India and China, they might run cultural onboarding sessions, right? So where Australian managers learn about hierarchical communication and in China and get indirect feedback styles in India, so that they can learn more about each other's culture. These sessions help them avoid imposing direct egalitarian or open communication norms that may not resonate with their Asian colleagues. So to sum it up, learning about each other's cultures, adapting to each other's style is the way to go. Now, secondly, the communication style workup. So how are they gonna work? So for instance, during a workshop, participants may examine how a Chinese employee nodding silently during a meeting does not necessarily, how we have this, even in like our culture, when we are nodding, it does not necessarily mean agreeing, like where we are silently trying to, this is like an habitual thing. So that does not necessarily indicate agreement, but a respectful listening, right? That's how we show when we're even sitting at a lecture, we're just silently nodding, but it doesn't mean we're agreeing to it. But an Australian team member might misread this as a full buy-in that, oh, okay, whatever you're saying, yeah, so we agree with it, but no. So leading to a misaligned expectations. So learning about these gestures and what to expect from these, if they get to learn about these styles, communication styles, it would be beneficial for the Australian team. And as for the multiple feedback channels, so for instance, a Sydney-based project manager might use a performance app with anonymous 360-degree feedback for Indian developers, right? But alongside one-on-one check-ins with the Chinese engineers who may find public correction inappropriate or face threatening. So what we have to do is we have to modify and try to incorporate feedback channels according to the different cultures that we have. We can't just use one style for everyone, okay? And now if we look how to resolve the conflicts. We can, when a conflict arises between between an Indian and Australian staff over deadlines, an Indian HR representative may privately mediate this discussion while refraining criticism constructively to maintain harmony and relationships with both the teams, right? And for how the meetings can be set, so meeting protocols are very important as well. As a team leader working with members from all 3 countries might send meeting agendas in advance. They would ask for a written input before meetings and follow up with emails inviting further thoughts, giving space to those less comfortable speaking up loud. So yeah, just learning how to do the different meeting protocols is also crucial. And finally, how they can focus on building the relationships. So what they can do, they can appoint cultural ambassadors. So how might that work? So for a Chinese Australian liaison officer may step in to interpret not only language but also cultural subtext when misunderstandings occur between senior Chinese engineers and Australian operations. So it's very important to have like a representative of each country. So for an Indian Australian manager who successfully coordinates weekly syncs between teams across Sydney, Mumbai, and Shanghai using tailored communication strategies and can be recognized for intercultural leadership and collaboration in their appraisal. And that's the conclusion of our presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Is it off now? Your camera?
Oh, yes. Switch it off. Like the recording.